Who's Beetlejuice?
Don't ever say that name.
Beetlejuice.
A fledgling director, a reluctant leading man, and everyone's favorite it girl, and a concept that the studio didn't quite understand. It doesn't sound like a recipe to create one of the most enduring and influential family comedies of a generation, but that's exactly what Tim Burton whipped up with Beetlejuice.
Come on, we're simpatico here. Look at us. Huh, we even shop in the same store. Hey, hermano. Yeah!
Beetlejuice has been a beloved and iconic franchise for over 36 years, so it's no wonder that folks are more than a little curious and skeptical as to whether or not this new sequel, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, can match what Burton achieved in 1988. Either way, please let us be your guide back into the strange and unusual as we tell you everything you need to know about Beetlejuice Beetlejuice.
The juice is loose.
Let's start with how he got here. Believe it or not, there was a script for Beetlejuice 2 way back in the 80s, which, I kid you not, was a Beetlejuice Goes to Hawaii theme. It featured all the main players returning after Lydia graduated from college. Mr. Dietz is opening a new hotel in Hawaii on a burial ground, the ghosts are ghosting, and if that sounds ridiculous and completely out of pocket, thankfully that concept never saw the light of day. In fact, the unexpected success of Beetlejuice is what prompted Warner Brothers to tap Burton to direct the Batman franchise, effectively ending any chance for a quick sequel. However, in past interviews, Winona Ryder, Michael Keaton, and Burton had mentioned how they wanted to try and get the gang back together for something, whether it was Beetlejuice related or not. And in 2022, that's exactly what they did. As early as January of that year, rumblings about Keaton returning to the Beetlejuice franchise began. I mean, we would have seen him return to another character originally directed by Tim Burton, but there was a little tax issue with that one, so it's never going to see the light of day. Instead, we'll just have to satisfy ourselves with the fact that we will see Keaton in his other career-defining role, the beloved, fast-talking, freelance bioexorcist Beetlejuice. Nearly 40 years later, who are the main players and what do they have in store? Let's start with exactly who's returning for the sequel. We know that our core three, that is Michael Keaton playing Beetlejuice, Winona Ryder playing Lydia Dietz, and Catherine O'Hara playing her stepmom Delia Dietz, will be returning to the cast, reprising the roles that they originated. These are the only OG names that we know about thus far, and based on the first trailer, we can assume that Lydia's biological father / Delia's previous husband is 6 feet under at the beginning of the story. One early peek at this shot at the funeral leads us to believe that perhaps Lydia is returning to her childhood home because her father has recently passed away. This puts all of the original characters back into the house where all the magic happened the first time around. But who will be joining them? First, we have Willem Dafoe, who plays Wolf Jackson, a paranormal detective, and essentially one of the civil servants who will be charged to investigate ne'er-do-wells like our Beetlejuice or other people who violate the rules of the afterlife. We're also joined by Rory from the real world, played by Justin Theroux. He's basically a fangirl of our Lydia Dietz, someone who is a bit of a star and a legend in the current timeline, mostly due to her inherent gifts and affinity to the afterlife. Joining them, we also have Dolores, played by Monica Bellucci, who, from her own words during our interview, is a soul-sucking demon.
All I can say is that Dolores, she's a soul-sucking demon in the afterlife.
When she says it with her accent, it just sounds so much cooler. We think she's somebody from Beetlejuice's afterlife. In fact, in our interview, we questioned her on something we spotted from the character poster. In that, she's seen without a finger, and if you recall from the 1988 film, when Beetlejuice proposes to Lydia, he actually removes a wedding band from a dead finger, maybe alluding to the fact that perhaps that finger and the ring belong to Dolores.
Beetlejuice!
What the f?
Danny DeVito has also been listed in a minor role as the janitor, and we can also expect that there might be some other familiar faces from the 1988 feature that have yet to be announced. Tim Burton is also reteaming with his longtime composing collaborator Danny Elfman for this year's score, borrowing themes from the original along with some new additions, and although Tim Burton will not be bringing back his original costume designer, he is bringing along Colleen Atwood, who he's worked with on films like Sweeney Todd and Dumbo. So, where do we pick up from the first film? Though much of the story is still under wraps, one thing we know for sure is that the 3 generations of the Dietzes return to their home in Winter River after tragedy has struck. Astrid, played by Jenna Ortega, discovers the mysterious model of the town in the attic, accidentally opening up a portal to the afterlife, and is kidnapped, forcing Lydia to summon the one person whose name she has long vowed to never speak again. I mean, this is our queen of the strange and unusual, so if she's stepping outside of her comfort zone, we can for sure expect a pretty exciting and thrilling ride. Another thing we can also expect is something that Keaton told us also in our interview. The stop motion or lack of CGI will be back for Beetlejuice this time around. He shared that that was one of the handshake deals that he and Burton had made when they decided to come back. For many years, both Keaton and Burton thought that the film rested on its own merits, and that returning to it would be almost sacrilegious. But it was this screenplay, penned by Alfred Goh and Miles Millar, based on a story by Seth Grahame-Smith, who folks may remember from Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies or Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, that sealed the deal. A very interesting dynamic in this new screenplay is that between Lydia and her daughter Astrid. Astrid, as teenagers are known to do, doesn't think very much of her mother's fame. Lydia, it seems, is somebody obsessed with the paranormal and the afterlife, or somebody who's perpetually looking back, whereas an Astrid, a passionate environmentalist, is someone who's always looking towards the future, and who, from her own words in the trailer, blatantly says doesn't believe in ghosts or any of the things that her mother has dedicated her life to. This sets up an interesting dichotomy between our former it girl and her daughter, who now considers her to be uncool, which is kind of the fate for all former it girls, but we think if there's anyone that can wear it with pride, it's Winona Ryder. Even though this is a grand production that has huge set pieces and tons of action, the production company behind it, Brad Pitt's Plan B Entertainment, who did films like 12 Years a Slave, Moneyball, and Minari, leads us to believe that this might be a bit of an indie feature with some rough and tumble effort. Just from the trailer, we can see how Tim Burton has gone back into the world of Beetlejuice, bringing us the famous style that we've grown accustomed to. So what are some of those familiar beats we expect to see? The look of the world, the look of the afterlife, the sandworms, all the mythology, the bureaucracy of the afterlife seem to be consistent with the first film, while also keeping true to what made it so heartwarming in the first place. This is a family film, a film about finding your people and embracing exactly who they are. And maybe this time around, as far as Beetlejuice is concerned, what happens when you abandon your family and they seek revenge. So that takes care of what we expect to see story-wise, but let's talk about what we're hoping to see. There will of course be the iconic shots, but one thing we hope that is key to Beetlejuice's timelessness is the music behind it. Not just Danny Elfman's score, but more importantly, the 60s needle drops that were infused into the feature to give it that timeless feel. And we hope that continues for this new version. There's nothing to say that Chappell Rowan and Charlie XCX wouldn't feel right at home on a Beetlejuice 2 soundtrack, but we're hoping that Burton and the filmmakers will stay true to the music stylings of the OG. We're also really interested in everything going on between Astrid and Lydia. Both of these characters look to have love interests somewhat on tap, but it's really the dynamic between the two of them that has us ready to see exactly what will be on the big screen. I mean, the connection between these two actresses is really cool in a lot of ways. Winona Ryder's Lydia Dietz was an archetype for Wednesday Addams, which, of course, Jenna Ortega plays in the Tim Burton-produced Netflix series Wednesday. This is just one of the many reasons why we think Ortega was perfectly cast as Lydia Dietz's daughter. And that would honestly be enough, but we also have the added bonus of Catherine O'Hara playing Delia Dietz, and honestly, just the thought of Delia Dietz as a grandmother is a gift we can't wait to unwrap. No word yet on whether or not we'll get to see the Maitlands in the sequel. Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis have not been announced to join Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, but we certainly can hope. Another thing we've been hoping for, and it looks like it's going to happen, is that we're going to get to dive deeper into the world of Beetlejuice, where he comes from, and maybe find out more about some of the people that were in his orbit before the events of the first film. And finally, the thing that we're most looking forward to is what has already sold the ticket for so many folks already. Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, and Catherine O'Hara are back, and we're going to get to watch these iconic characters play in this beloved world yet again. The nostalgia goggles are in full effect, and we can't wait to put ourselves back to where we were when we watched the first one for the very first time. And if that isn't enough to get you excited for this movie, do we need to remind you of his resume yet again?
Well, I attended Juilliard. I'm a graduate of the Harvard Business School. I travel quite extensively. I lived through the Black Plague, and I had a pretty good time during that. I've seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it.
That's it for us, and that's all you need to know before you go see Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. And just a reminder that tickets are available now on Fandango.com. And after you see the movie, don't forget to rate and review it on Rotten Tomatoes.